All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. I am your host, Jeff Freeman, and today I am joined by my very special co-host, Alessandra Nadudvari. Welcome, Alessandra. How are you?
Hello, thank you. I'm fine.
Now, you guys know Alessandra. We've had her on the show a few times, and she has graciously accepted to come on as my co-host today because what we're going to be talking about is exactly in her wheelhouse. Knights Templar and the Sinclair family and all of this is kind of where we're headed today, and maybe looking into where they may have been in North America. So this is going to be exciting. And I know that Alessandra, if you guys haven't heard, she's got some books that she has written. They're children's books, and I had a picture on the intro there just a moment ago. I'll bring that up real quick and show you guys. She is a very accomplished author and a researcher. And I tell you what, I'm just so happy to have her on the show today. If you want, you can talk about your books just briefly if you'd like. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Yes, I do write books for young readers. I would say the age group is 10 to 13 or 14. Mm-hmm. The first book is called Nicky and the Lost Templar, and I wrote it for my son, who is Nicholas or Nicky. The book is partially biographical because it talks about the experiences that me and my family had while we lived in Nova Scotia. We still live here, but this is when we first came here and stumbled upon the mystery of Oak Island and the Knights Templar. So I wanted to honor our family and the story of the Knights Templar and write a story for my son, mm-hmm. in which he's the hero. So
all right, that's fantastic. Well, again,
that was a mouthful, but it's a fun story.
Well, thank you so much for being my co-host today, because I know that this is something you and I have talked about. And I've been really looking forward to our very special guest today, folks. We have Gretchen Cornwall and Shawn Williamson. I'm going to go ahead and bring them on right now. And there they are. Hey, both of you, welcome, and thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, as you guys know, Gretchen is an accomplished author and researcher and singer-songwriter, and has just finally gotten back to the UK. And I know that's had to be, you were over here for quite a few months, and you've written a couple of great books. And again, thank you so much for coming on. And I know that, I guess, one of the books that you have is The Secret Dossier of a Knights Templar, right? And then the other one is that photo book that you worked on.
Yes, well, it's a photo journal of my time on the Mohican Reservation in Wisconsin, mm-hmm. where Wayne Murphy, retired law enforcement officer, discovered what I believe to be a Templar Knight cross pate. So I invested time and flew over to Wisconsin, and what I found there blew my mind, for which I had hoped would be the case, and it was. Hence the ensuing book, which has a good 155 images in it, photographs, maps, illustrations, and truly a catalog of what happened day by day during that 10 days in Wisconsin. Yep. It was quite a powerful journey, and it was a pleasure to have met the Mohican language expert at the Information Center, and to have had that cultural exchange on the reservation. So yep. Yes, and I'm looking forward to going back.
Yeah, and we know that you will be, and we're going to be kind of going into that here later on in the show today. We're going to be talking about what's happening in Wisconsin and Team Templar North America. So let's jump over to Shawn real quick. Shawn Williamson, and again, sir, thank you so much for coming on. And I wanted to give this an opportunity and all of our members a chance to get to know who you are. I know that we've had you on the show before when we were interviewing with Team Templar North America, but you know it's been a while, and for particular reasons, those interviews were removed for the time being, and it's because of what's coming up. We'll talk about in just a little bit. But Shawn, thank you so much for coming on today. And I know you're also working on a book. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of more therapy than anything else, I have to say. You know, I get up early, and I've been putting information together that I've heard and found, valid information to back that up in the form of a novel called Questus. And, I get up early and it's, spend 3 hours writing, kind of settles me for the day. And then I get into the stonework, but it's been a grand passage, shall we say, from actually being on the Great Lakes as a merchant seaman. And I left the UK at 17. All this is in the book in actual fact, but it's all true anyway. And my father got me a job on the Great Lakes freighters. He was a first officer on the Great Lakes, and I started off as an ordinary seaman and ended up a bosun. But I was on the lakes for 3 years on various ships, and I remember 2 Newfoundland guys, and I didn't know what was going on at the time, to be honest, but it was my father that got me interested in the Templars and stuff. And later on, when Andrew Sinclair wrote the book The Sword and the Grail, he sent me a copy, and I believe it was around 1992. This was after I'd been on the lakes. And he said he wrote in the book from Canada, "Seek this man out, Andrew Sinclair." And I ended up working with Andrew as his researcher. So, it was more than just joining the dots, and there was an avenue of fate to the whole situation. And, when I was on one of the first ships, a Canadian Hunter, 2 Newfoundland guys who kind of befriended me, because I was like 17, this was roughy tufty merchant seaman and all that, going into bars, and they kind of helped me settle into the work and stuff. And I heard one of them say to his son, it was a father and son, and he said, geez boy, there's something a bit strange about that guy. What's he here for, And but now I know, but it's taken 30 odd years to find out why. So that was an incredible passage. And it connected me to, in a way, almost like through your DNA, to, where the Sinclairs and the guns went from Scotland. And, of course, I was born in England, and my family ended up in England. They were actually Jacobites. They fought the English. And whether they were opportunists or, convicted Catholic Jacobites, I don't know, but they ended up in England, and I ended up tracing my ancestry back to the clan gun. And so it went on from there, but it was like I was reverse engineering my whole life by being on the lakes and then coming full circle back to meeting prominent Sinclairs. And, who can believe in synchronicity? Well, I ended up as sculptor to the clan Sinclair, researcher to Andrew Sinclair. Any secrets the Sinclairs had, I know them, and not only that, in 2016, when I fell on hard times, I'd done quite a lot of free work for the Sinclairs. And, as a gun clan ally to Andrew Sinclair, 2016, there was an opportunity to be the keeper of the Sinclair Lighthouse. And I was actually the last person to look after the Sinclair Study Centre in 2016.
That's so the Nosshead Lighthouse, right?
Yeah, Nosshead Lighthouse. And
okay, yep.
Yeah, so I had access to all the books. I took photographs of what I wanted, to know more about. I found papers that were about to be thrown out, because it's all gone now, it all changed. But I saved valuable information, and I've got all that.
That's fantastic. And I know that, and you're talking about being on the Great Lakes. And of course, me, I'm a Yooper from Michigan. So that, being up in the Lake Superior and Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, that's my stomping ground. So you're talking my language when you get, and now I've never been on a merchant ship or merchant marine, but that you talk about that had to be a pretty tough life. especially for a young man, and you were introduced to that by your father. But now you spent some time in Canada up there as well. Is that right? Did you go to school up there, or where did that?
Yeah, I was formative years really. Was re-educated in Toronto and was in St. John's, Newfoundland. Was in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I actually ended up working off Sable Island on a gas rig. All this paid for my money to train as a stone carver when I returned to the UK. And, you know, there was just something about my father that when you looked at him, you thought, you know, there's more to this guy as well. And he did a portrait of himself as a gun clan knight when he actually had an accident on the Ontario Power, which was the sister ship to the Cape Breton miner. And technically, it was like a spinal fracture. He lost his ear. They found it again and stitched it back to his head. So when he wore sunglasses, they were always kind of cockeyed or whatever. But you get an idea of the character we're looking at. He would have actually been better suited to a Errol Flynn pirate movie or something like that. But, you know, why did he portray himself as a gun clan knight? He knew less about his own heritage than I got to learn about. But again, he went through this process of reverse engineering it, almost like DNA. So
it comes up through the blood. It's the call of your blood.
Yeah, as the Sinclairs would say, what is born of the blood can never be driven from the bone. And I think that's a beautiful saying.
It is. That really, truly is. Wow. So how did you get introduced to stonemason and sculpting? I mean, how did that come about? Is that something that you thought about in your younger years, or?
Well, it was, you know, I mean, I switched from woodwork at school to doing three-dimensional pottery and stuff. And it was just in me to want to do it. And I can't describe it. I would have probably ended up earning more money if I'd have stayed on the Great Lakes, but that was just a passage to all this. And, you know, I was kind of really not surprised when Wayne Murphy called me from, you know, the backwaters of Wisconsin to tell me about this, you know, native project there. And, you know, like as Gretchen will explain, you know, I mean, I was totally blown away by what Gretchen and Wayne found. And not only that, two ships that I was on the lakes, there was two native guys and one from the Abenaki, who I went back to meet later in 2005, and another guy from Florida. Both of them said the same thing. They said, "Your guardian is a bear guardian." And the first guy took me to my first stone carving experience was in Thunder Bay, where this guy took me uptown and we bought some soapstone. And in the Inuit tradition, that's how I began to carve stone, you know. Wow. So, and then I went back to the UK to do it on a professional basis because I wanted to try and make a living at something that I loved.
Right. Absolutely. And did you go to schooling for this as well? I mean, did you take, lessons from,
I went through as much training as you could ever imagine, but as technically qualified to the hilt. I ended up doing validation on forgeries, antiquities, that type of work. I later went to university to do a degree, but that actually is just, for me, to be honest, a degree is a standard of mediocrity. You know, I ended up working with Josephine de Vasconcelos, who was a Brazilian sculptress when she was in her 80s, and I went for the greats in this because I thought because I've been put down so much through the British education system. I thought, no, let's have a look at this. I'm going to show you what this is about. I'm going to show you real class. And had I been nurtured into the establishment system of events, then probably I would be a lesser man.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right, because you had that in you to be a sculptor. So getting the degree was just a formality, really, I would think, right? So because you were already doing it and you were learning and getting, if it's in your blood, like you said before, and it sounds like it was, then it was your talent was already there. It was just a matter of making it come out in the work that you're doing. And that kind of led you to, is that how you got connected with the family, the Sinclair family, is through the sculpting? Or
yeah, through the sculpting, really. And I knew Ian Sinclair. I'd actually sought him out because he was working with Robert Lomas and Christopher Knight, who did the Hiram Key and other books. And I met Ian in the early 90s, and he was, had lots and lots of information and knowledge. And he set up a Knight Templar organization at the Clan Sinclair Study Centre, and I was part of that. And it was to do with, working out what happened to the Knights Templar treasure, if you could call it that, or sacred relics, where they went after the dissolution of the Templars, and so on and so on. And they brought all the formative information, both from the United States and from Scotland and England, and compiled it in the library there. And it was a great centre of learning, It was such a sad day when we had to abandon it, and the books that were connected and the information connected to the great native tradition of the United States of America, and all the journeying and the other version of events of history that is going to be revealed there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know too that working with Dr. Andrew Sinclair, you guys were, when you got together with him. Now he was a retired Oxford and Cambridge professor, right? And so you got connected with him, and you guys were like going to Roslyn Chapel and places of that nature too. Excuse me. And you were looking for Knights Templar tombstones. Was that right?
That's totally correct. And codex and the analyzing carvings rather than just literature. We were actually almost going in the same way that you would go into Egypt to an archaeological situation, and charting different details that we were finding on anomalous tombstones, which actually nobody really knew too much about, because they reused these tombstones sacrilegiously in churches, in walls, doorways, that type. They made steps from them, and actually there was a huge amount of them. And yeah, we wanted to know, how could we identify the tombstones of Knights of the Holy Orders, so the Knights of St. John of the Hospital, Teutonic Knights, from those of Knights Templar. And I wrote a paper based on the work with Andrew Sinclair, and also some information that came to light later, information that I first of all found at the lighthouse, Northside Lighthouse, information from a ground scan at Temple Ballantradock, which was the headquarters of the Knights Templar, and later the Knights of St. John. And then finding out that a guy I worked with, Hugh Douglas, a very, very talented master mason, had been rebuilding a wall there and found 3 anomalous tombstones,
Wow.
But I'd seen that information in a report from a ground scan before they were actually, whilst they were still under the earth,
Wow. Yeah.
And then a friend finds them. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you had mentioned in one of the other podcasts that you were involved in, you had actually mentioned how, and correct me if I'm not stating this correctly, and of course, Gretchen and Alessandra, you probably know this as well, talking about how the cross, the Templar cross, changed to a circle cross.
Yeah,
at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And this was, in a way, again, a reverse engineering process of trying to work out what happened. Was there an organization that persisted after the dissolution of the Knights Templar?
Mm-hmm.
And curiously, say, for instance, the tomb of William Sinclair is on a wheel cross. It has similar, what I call secondary images around it. And I've done quite a detailed analysis with sketches of the two types. There's the wheel cross tombstone and then the ring cross tombstones. And it goes deeper than that, because the ring cross tombstones, for instance, actually, in most cases, form a covert image of the Templar cross, but it's like hidden in plain sight. I wondered if the tombstones had been painted. Yes, you get chalices on them. Yes, you get shears. And then always when they see shears, for instance, on tombstones, the archaeological academics will say, shears must mean they were a wealthy farmer type of person. But I say, and Andrew said the same thing as me, shears, sheep, shepherd, King David. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's two forms of thought going on with that. And I think we're looking at a codex of carving that represented intimately Knights Templar that didn't really necessarily wanted to be known that they were part of the order, and they were buried under anomalous tombstones. But
can I say something?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. So go ahead, Alessandra.
I'm sorry, I thought that I should say something about William Sinclair, the one whose tombstone you described. Mm-hmm. For our viewers who might not know which William Sinclair was, because William was a very popular name among the Sinclairs, right?
Yeah.
So Sir William Sinclair, who was buried under this tombstone, died in the year 1330. He was fighting the Spanish Moors, and the reason why he went from Scotland to Spain was because he was on the way to Jerusalem, and he was carrying the heart of Robert the Bruce.
Oh wow,
that's correct. Yeah,
King of Scotland. So the heart of the Bruce was being taken to Jerusalem, where it was going to be buried. But Sir William Sinclair and other knights who were with him were attacked by the Spanish Moors, and they died. And the Moors were so impressed with what Sir William Sinclair was trying to do, they allowed the heart of the Bruce to be taken back to Scotland.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it never made it to Jerusalem. It ended up back in Scotland. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely as I know it as well. But again, prior to the dissolution of the Templars, it appears that there was these tombstones, or slab stones as they're called, in the form of the ring cross tombstone, with the, emanating from the stem of Jesse, which emanates from the steps of Solomon. You have two different versions of the event. Incidentally, I've also found similar tombstones of Knights Hospitallers in Cumbria, and their tombstones are slightly different. And, knowing this information obviously gives us the edge to some extent. But what I'm very curious about are the tombstones that came after, which are wheel cross tombstones, because before the Templars, major Templar commanders were executed in France in Chinon Tower, there are examples of this these wheel cross stones carved into the walls, and an image of St. Catherine. So for me, it's like there's a chain of events that show that there was some kind of system in place that carried on covertly that we don't know too much about. And it's difficult to get to this information, but you know, based on what I've seen of the carvings, then you know, I think the case is just about proven, because as we know, the Sinclairs were the guardians of sacred relics and treasures as well. So it brings me to the point of what happened to the Knights Templar when they, you know, became dissolved, and what treasure or sacred relics were they carrying, and where did they end up? Because I think this latter order, covert order, were the people responsible for moving these treasures around and looking after them. And I think the Sinclairs were intimately connected with that. Not necessarily Templars themselves, but perpetrators of this secondary order. And it's very hard to get to this information, and it's brave to try and find the information to prove this in reality, because it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. But I'm doing the best I can.
Absolutely. My interpretation of Saint Catherine, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, is that she is the key of navigation for the Templars. The wheel is essentially a compass, the directional winds, and she's often seen with a quill, which is imparting knowledge down to the next generation. So that's how I have always viewed her, and her importance to the Templars. So what is your thought on that? Have you come across references to that?
Well, now that you mention it, I hadn't actually, because I've been so focused on what's kind of in front of me that but we could be looking at a ship's wheel, couldn't we? A navigational consequence of, what they were once, a military order that actually turned their power into a sea power. And I've seen some stuff recently, because I always connect it. I don't know what you think about this, Gretchen and Alessandra, but I've seen some stuff recently that the fleet that left La Rochelle, or the fleet that left France, I've seen a couple of segments of information that say that they were flying skull and crossbones rather than Templar flags. Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Nobody, they were escaping from the powerful papacy, etc.
Yes. Well, Roger of Sicily, Roger of Sicily flew the skull and crossbones, and there is controversy around it, in that it may have originally been red in color, red skull and crossbones, or the color rouge, Jolly Roger. But he was a contemporary of Bernard de Clairvaux, one of the founding minds behind the Templars. And Roger was a patron. And the adoption of the skull and crossbones apparently happened fairly early. And of course, we know it as a black field with the white skull and crossbones. And that the battle flag of the Templars was the black field above, and then the white, below it. So it makes sense that they would adopt the Jolly Roger as well, and it being an allusion to John the Baptist as having suffered a beheading, but with the sarcophagus going back to the time of Christ and John the Baptist being very small, the length of a thigh bone. Judaic tradition, you bury the bones into a stone box the length of your thigh bone, and you place the skull on top. So it's quite an ancient transmission of information, and it's interesting in connection with John the Baptist as having suffered a beheading, as the skull and crossbones is, I believe, his standard, if you will. And as the Templars became involved in a covert war, if you will, against the Catholic Church that had essentially betrayed them, they became pirates, and that battle standard became the symbol for pirates going down the centuries. So that's my take on that, Shawn.
I have a question for Shawn.
Go ahead.
Shawn, when you were studying Templar tombs, especially the slabs, did you find any skulls and crossbones on them?
I found one, just one, and I never found one on any of the slab tombstones ever. They came along after kind of like 1450 onwards. But I did find, and I've got a picture of it, and it's an incredible thing, this, because I know that it was carved at a Cistercian monastery and it's hidden, but it's a skull and crossbones with a Templar, the Templar motif above it. So that was at Furness Abbey, where it was said that the Knights Templar fought against the dissolution of their order there. So there was a group of Templars at the Cistercian Abbey at Furness Abbey that fought to keep the order going, and as they did in Germany and other places. But in my mind, if I was to be a betting man, I would certainly bet what I had on the notion that the Templars made it to America. They set up some kind of routes and passages, navigational or otherwise, brought their treasures and relics to a place that they knew they were going to be safe from the all-pervasive Roman Catholic Church at the time, especially the Inquisition, the Papal Inquisition first, then the Spanish Inquisition. And, they came into it to England looking for Templars to torture, with ships loaded with branding irons and all sorts. I mean, this was very serious, and it was actually Edward
II.
Either Edward II that denied them that psychopathic privilege, and so. But anyway, back to the South America thing, because this links. So anywhere you find the history of piracies, there you shall also find the fire of the Templars. It's interconnected, and I haven't got as far as to be able to work that out completely. And Chile, by chance, just had a huge history of piracy. So that's another reason that I ended up there.
Yeah, that's one of the things we wanted to ask you about, and looking at this, the skull and crossbones, that was something that I heard on another show that we did, and I was fascinated by that. I never would have thought to connect the skull and crossbones to the Templar.
That was part of my interview on Oak Island in December of 2018.
Yes.
And I was glad that they kept that in. So it is a very important and covert link between the betrayal of the Templars and what they chose to do to protect their traditions, their spiritual treasures, as well as their physical, and definitely their DNA. At that juncture, they were free to marry or have children, pass their knowledge down to children or adopted sons and daughters. And the traditions became broader, if you will, throughout the guilds. They were trading partners with the guilds. And human beings form relationships. You do business with your friends, and you grow. You trust them. You build up relationships with them. And Templar Knight families. You know, we always view the Templars as somehow existing in a bubble, isolated from everything else. But there were several families that were quite proud to be associated with the Templars, and they gave them money and sons and land and goods. So you have to ask yourself, who is a Templar? Is it just a guy on a horse? Or is it a gentleman in charge of running a massive farm? You know, is it the winemaker down the way? Is it the blacksmith? Or the captain of a pirate vessel? So
I think all of those.
Exactly.
All of those. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's very interesting. I just, that's so fascinating. And talking about the box, and I know that, you know, I had heard also that when a Templar was buried, there was supposed to be no fanfare. There was supposed to be no, you know, big deal made about it. And matter of fact, many of the times the grave markings might be just a stone, you know, with hardly anything on it at all. As the way I've been.
No names, unnamed graves, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they gave up their name when they joined the order.
Yeah.
And it was all about service. And I think if they were of greater note, they probably had a sword carved on to the surface, and perhaps a compass rose as well, such as the one in Cumbria at the little church in Caldbeck that I highlighted in my book. But there is a Templar. They know his name. Is it Sir Thomas de Bray? And that's interesting because it's not very often that records survive like that. But they know that he came from a village half an hour away by car, and that he was buried at the church in Caldbeck in Cumbria. And they brought his stone slab in from ruin from the weather, which is wonderful, as all these stones deserve to be preserved and brought in from the cold.
I agree.
So.
There's a picture that Shawn shared with sent me and shared with me that I wanted to bring up here too. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I was thinking this looks like they might be some of those tops, the slabs. If you were examining, is that what these are here?
Yeah, there's one in particular, and that's the one by the doorway.
This one here, yeah.
Yeah, which I'm pointing at. And this was on with Carl and Hamilton on Lost Relics of the Knights Templar. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we got to go to Kilmartin, Lochawe, and those areas. Now, most of these other tombstones have been carved with similarities to Templar tombstones, but it's been a very, very strong Gallic Norwegian style. And originally MacDonald of the Isles, for instance, that Robert the Bruce had an alliance with, they put forward 2,000 highly trained troops and mercenaries to fight the English. And they had their own culture as well. And, you know, this is represented on their tombstones, but there's also similar symbols to the ones that I've found on the slab stones of Knights and also Knights Templar. And one of the stones here, of course, this was in context to the idea that there was Templars who fought at Bannockburn. And one of the stones here is very definitely a Knight Templar tombstone. And whether he fought at Bannockburn or not, I can't actually say. But it's curious that this particular Templar tombstone is amongst these gallo glass mercenary stones of different ages. And why it's there in this area, I don't know. But I can tell you one thing: it's virtually identical to the ones that were found at Temple Ballantradock, the Knight Templar headquarters. So it's actually game, set, and match, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. Wow.
I want to say
That's
something about the
exciting.
Battle of Bannockburn, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So this Battle of Bannockburn, and this is for our viewers who might not have this information, happened on June 24th, 1314. And June 24th is the feast day of St. John the Baptist. And who did Templars revere?
John the Baptist.
St. John the Baptist, yes.
Exactly right.
So it's quite the coincidence that Robert the Bruce would pick June 24th as the day for his battle.
Yep. And that's something that I've learned from all of you, from doing these shows and meeting you all and finding this out, that I never knew that the Templars revered John the Baptist the way they did. And now we find out, like the chalice that the one vessel that Carl and Hamilton have from the relics of the lost relics of the Knights Templar, the face on it. Now, it's not been proven that face on on all four sides of that, sides around the sides of it, there's four of them on there, that is John the Baptist. It's not been proven because that'd be almost impossible to do, but it's very likely.
Absolutely. I agree. And the beard is interesting. The beard is actually cut into 3 sections, if you've noticed. And there is always a sense of the number 3 is a sacred and powerful number.
Yep.
And in many orders over the last centuries, there are often 3 layers of spiritual growth and meditation to achieve and attain. And I believe that that's what the beard symbolizes. And the beard is very important to the Knights Templar. It is hearkening back to the time of King Solomon, of David, and the beard meaning wisdom. And to see those 4 faces with the beards cut into 3 sections. But also what was interesting with that is the knob, I don't want to call it that really, on the stem. You've got that bulge that's cut into, I believe, 8, so it's octagonal. So there's a lot happening with that vessel, which is exciting.
Yeah, libation vessel. That's it reminded me what it was called. I was stumbling there with. Thank you.
I couldn't remember it either, but I knew exactly what Alessandra was speaking about. It's a beaubeautiful piece, just
it's wonderful. I've got a picture someplace. I was trying to find it while you were speaking there. I was trying to find the picture that I have of it, because it's fantastic, and these things stunning. Are just. And again, going back to John the Baptist, I mean, I had no idea that he was revered as much as he was by the Templar Knights. And it totally makes sense, though. It really does. And then when you think about the fact of he was beheaded, and then, that maybe has something to do with the skull and crossbones,
Well, if you look at medieval art and statuary, he is always depicted as either a skull or as a head on a platter, or just a floating head. You always know who it is, because that's iconography, and a picture tells 1,000 words. And I did come across, we were talking about the skulls and crossbone. I don't have a photograph of it handy, but it is actually, I believe it might be iron. It is actually a crucifix with Christ on it, that was actually discovered in a church in Cumbria. And the base of the crucifix, there is the skull and crossbones, and this thing is dated to the mid 1300s. So it's quite a piece, and it had been hidden in, I believe, if I remember correctly, a church wall. probably to hide it from the Reformationists movements that were into smashing and destroying and burning everything that might have been construed as an idol. So fortunately for us today, that piece is still present with us. So that's a very early image of the skull and crossbones at the foot of Christ on the cross, mid 1300s. So,
can I make a title real quick? Sorry, Shawn. Keep jumping. So on Oak Island, we have this megalithic cross known as Nolan's Cross. And in the center of the cross is a stone, which people usually refer to as the headstone. But it seems to faintly resemble a human head or skull.
Yep.
Yeah,
and I think Gretchen talked about that during her presentation to the Laginas on the Curse of Oak Island.
I did. I believe it is a representation of the skull of John the Baptist.
John the Baptist, yes.
And cousin to, and his cousin was Jesus. So why should he not be important?
Exactly. So, absolutely.
And he is. Yep. He is.
Yep.
Well, I've got a little more to say about that cross, because I've actually got a copy of it, a replica, and it's a very, very beautiful piece that was originally cast in lead, and I'm just trying to think of the house, the major house it was found at Cumbria. I do have a replica. I'm just trying to think if I brought it with me down to London, but yes, it has a skull and crossbones at the base of it, which Christ on the cross in his agony to that extent. But next to that, in actual fact, is also a noose, a hangman's noose as well, which I've not seen before in those two things at once. However, at St. Bees Priory in Cumbria, when they discovered what many people thought was a Knight of the Holy Orders, he was buried, and I've got the autopsy pictures of this, because he was found so miraculously preserved that people actually thought he was a recent murder victim. It was discovered by student archaeologists. You can still see his eyes, and his blood is still viscous. Wow. But he too, this knight in particular, he's got quite large hands as well. He has this noose around his neck as well, which is not like a noose that would be capable of hanging somebody, because it's very small, thin rope. And the Freemasons, of course, call this a cable tow. And the initiation scene of Knights Templar on Rosslyn, which is all that's left of it, is a corbel. A corbel is a facet that architectural feature that supports a major statue of something. But on that, of course, and much controversy about this, is a Knights Templar initiation scene in 1480, for instance, when Rosslyn was built. So well after the dissolution of the Templars. But that initiation scene, one knight is being brought with a Bible. He's being pulled almost like a dog on a leash, but this guy's got a noose, So this is obviously some kind of knightly thing, and it's on that cross that I have a replica that Gretchen's just mentioned. Yeah.
Wow.
And then how did the Freemasons pick that up? Because they have an initiation ceremony that involves a noose, right? The Freemasons.
Yeah,
that's right. And that, that's where we find the link, I think, with the Templars. Did somehow the Templars transmute into becoming the Freemasons, which is highly conjectural. It's this, in Masonic tradition, they have records that differ, for instance, say, than the academic establishment, and there is, there's no smoke without fire. but I think there was another order. I think there was a secondary order that came after the Templars, which was covert, and that was the order that melded perhaps into the tradition of craft masonry, for instance, or the Freemasons.
Interesting question from Sarah here that I brought up. Have you seen the face on the church in Temple Combe in UK? Thank you. I knew I was going to stumble that. Yeah. What do you guys know about this? Anybody have any details on that at all?
Go ahead, Gretchen.
I have not been there, but I have seen images of that. And it seems likely that that rescued image is more than likely that of John the Baptist, although it has also been said that it could be Veronica's veil. Either way, it's one of them, isn't it? So, but being that it was a Templar church, it stands to reason it would have been John the Baptist. Probability, the term probability is always very important. And it is also important to maintain the rigor of academic research and to follow those heavy standards, but to not use one's, how do I say this, as Shawn alluded to earlier, piece of paper as a means of power to dismiss inquiry, seeking, asking questions, and also protecting one's paycheck and standing in the academic community. So people are always motivated by something, and it's whether or not that motivation is pure. But so being that it is a Templar church, it is more than likely probability John the Baptist.
Right.
So absolutely,
makes sense for sure. Wow, that's very interesting. There's another picture that we have of some of these slabs, and I just find these so fascinating. I really do, and that's why I keep going back to them. This is another picture that you shared with me, Shawn, that I wanted to bring up, and it's you observing some that are laid out. I'm going to bring the picture up here real quick, and I know it's real small. Sorry, folks, I know it's really small, but it does depict several. Now, are these individual tombs, or are these just taken off and moved to this area for display? How is that?
Yeah, I think they were gathered up from the area at Kilmartin, and they range from different timescales, but I went to Kilmartin to look at the different stones with Carl and Hamilton, but the idea was to show them the ring cross tombstone, which is definitely that of somebody that had been a Templar. The ones that I'm showing there was a secondary visit. That was before that particular period. And the thing that's in my paper on these tombstones is that many of the symbols that are on those stones and are on some of the Templar stones, and some that we don't know whether they were Templar or Knights Hospitaller. The symbols are concurrent; they're there all the time. It's either you get maybe a Grail, you'll maybe get the sheep shears, you'll get the stem of Jesse, you'll get the steps of Solomon, you'll get the ring cross, which disguises a Knight Templar motif, and you get all these symbols. Once I got into these particular symbols, I discovered that actually these symbols go back from right through to the 6th century and appear on like what you would say could be Christian pagans becoming Christian, or even before that, like there's a meaning behind these symbols that I would like to think there's a connection to Arthurian chivalry, and that was something that was picked up on, was known about by the Templars, because of course they're intimately linked to that in any case, the notion of the Grail. And yeah.
Forgive me, Shawn, for interrupting. I'm just this is so, it's always so exciting. I live for this. But Chrétien de Troyes was a contemporary of Bernard de Clairvaux, and he was, of course, writing down the Arthurian stories in France. Of course, Geoffrey of Monmouth did as well, but I believe there was a monk named Gildas who seems to have predated both those gentlemen. But definitely around the time the Templars were becoming who they were, Arthurian tales were very popular. Eleanor of Aquitaine supporting troubadours to sing tales of Arthur. The artwork, everyone wanted to be an Arthurian knight seeking the Holy Grail. And Edward I, Hammer of the Scots, when he passed, his son Edward II inherited. Edward II was considered one of the worst kings of England. At least he did not let in a profuse amount of inquisitors. He only let in 3 men. And they weren't supposed to torture, but they found ways to torture Templars. But when his son took the throne, Edward III, he actually created the Order of the Garter. He was inventing his version of Arthurian courtly life and was trying to establish that at Windsor Castle. And so he was steeped in Arthurian lore, and I'm convinced he had Templar sympathies. That culminates at Royston Cave, and that's something for another time. But there are some very interesting things that happened with the property of Royston that the Templars had owned up to that crossroads in Royston. The cave underneath was Templar, but he took it by administrative force, Edward III did, away from the Hospitallers, and became the protector of that cave, that property, up until the Victorian era, when it changed hands locally. So what was this Arthurian-driven King of England doing, seeking out this particular Templar Knight property and actually wresting it away from the Hospitallers? So interesting stuff.
Wow,
interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it really truly is. That's for sure. Another question that popped up there, and again, I don't know anything about the Cathar symbology, but the question there, does that have any significance? It says how much or did any of the Cathar symbology get absorbed into the Templar line? Do you know anything about that? I'm not familiar with that at all personally, but I didn't know if that was something.
Shawn, do you have anything to add on that front?
Not really. I know that there was an interconnection of Cathar and Templar families, over time, but it's not really an area that, I've focused in. I do intend to go to the south of France and, check out some of the castles and that kind of connection, but not really, it's not really on. I have read books on the Cathars and stuff, but no, I don't know too much about that.
I'm not certain myself about the interconnecting symbols, but I know the Templars were sympathetic to the Cathars. Even Bernard de Clairvaux went down and tried to reconvert them. The Cathars were, they basically said, look, we're Christians. It's just that, and this is something that will bend everybody's mind. Today, there are 35,000 different Christian sects in the world. 35,000.
Wow.
I mean, I might be able to tell you the difference between a few of them.
Yeah,
I think we all can.
Yeah, maybe 5.
But 35,000. But
wow.
Unfortunately, the Cathars, Bernard de Clairvaux went down, tried to bring them more in line with the Catholic Church at that time. they said no, and he came away and said they needed a great deal of talking to, but he also said that they were more Christian than most Christians that he knew, which is interesting. And according to legend, I don't know how true this is, but according to legend, his mother was related to the Counts of Toulouse, who were, of course, supporters of the Cathars. And they were quashed along with the Cathars by the Albigensian Crusades, and I'm going to get this wrong, 1225, 1224, something like that, but a long time ago, right amongst the Templar era. So, but yes, I think that they there could have been cousin sympathies there.
Mm-hmm.
But as to actual symbols, I don't know myself.
I don't know much about the symbolism either, but I think I can add a little bit to the connection between Templars and Cathars. So, as Gretchen said, Templars stayed out of the Albigensian Crusade. They didn't want to fight fellow Christians. Yeah. But when Count Raymond of Toulouse was killed during the Crusade, he was also excommunicated by the church because he was supporting the Cathars. And because he was excommunicated, he could not be buried on consecrated soil or in consecrated soil. So he couldn't be put in a churchyard, for example. And Templars allowed his body to be buried on their soil.
So, oh my, that's heavy. Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Alessandra. I will just drop this in briefly, since a lot of the people watching today are Oak Island aficionados. Mm-hmm. Yep. I did find out in my investigative journey to Chateau de la Rochefoucauld in 2019 that Occitan was spoken all the way up as far north as the castle there, Rochefoucauld Castle, and there is an Occitan word on Zena Halpern's map, which is really interesting. So I thought I would drop that on you. And bark is the term, I believe, and it has different meanings. Barque can either mean the ship of St. Peter's or a literal ship, but I was surprised to find, and it took me going there to find out that I've just lost one of my ears, excuse me. But yes, they spoke the language all the way as far north as Chateau de la Rochefoucauld, amongst other things I found out on that trip. But I just to round that comment out, there's so much to say, and I can't wait to hear Shawn express more of what he has discovered. But I will be, now that I am back in the UK, I had hoped to finish my latest research last August and release a book, but I found myself through lockdown and isolation, my mother's 24/7 carer for 14 months. And it was quite something. And I am so glad that I was there for her, and in many ways, she was also there for me, and we're good friends. We enjoy Oak Island. We always watch Oak Island together. We talk about it afterwards. We dissect it to the nth degree. It's just so enjoyable, and I have that connection with my father as well. Who has been very insightful in regarding Oak Island nuts and bolts, as well as the project in Wisconsin.
He went with you to Wisconsin, didn't he? I read that.
No, but he would love to, and I would. No, he hasn't.
Okay.
He wasn't, but I know he would love to. And he I'm sure he would actually be quite helpful. He's a very intelligent man, and I respect him a great deal. But that would be amazing to be there with him. So I'm proud of him. He's 82, and he is riding, doing long haul marathon bike rides with. He's got a tent on his bike. He camps. You know, you would never know. Just incredible what he has done to rebuild his body and his physical life. So I'm quite proud of him for trading in a real horse. He used to ride horses for a steel horse.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I could only hope to be that. When I'm 82, I tell you, I want to be able to keep going. That's for sure.
Me too. I think my father's in better shape than I am. But no, I'm quite blessed to have my family on board with me on this journey. But now that I'm back in the UK, I will be writing, researching, vlogging, interviewing, having great conversations with Alessandra, Jeff, and Shawn, and Wayne, and anybody else who will listen about the Knights Templar.
Oh, I know. That's something that we're all into. I know that that's why everybody here that's watching right now is all, and we'll be watching later on after on the recording, you know, very interested in the Knights Templar and there was a good question that was just brought up by Michael here on that I wanted to throw up here real quick. But before I do that, I wanted to ask you about something you mentioned, Shawn. This was something that was mentioned in another podcast, and you alluded to it just a few moments ago, that you wrote a paper, and this paper was called Evidence of the Knights Templar Tombstones. Is that something that people can see? Is that out on the internet anywhere that, oh, you've got a copy?
Yeah, no, it's finished. It's edited now. Actually, Gretchen helped me with that, and then I did some more, and there was some more information that I got through from Hamilton, and it's ready. I really don't know how to release it. I'm not bothered. I thought, well, I would have actual papers, you know, printed up in a booklet form, because it's 11,000 words with illustrations, and you know, it's black and white, but it's got all the technical information there that I think would be helpful to the, you know, the Templar Forum in that respect. I really don't know how to go about whether I should publish it and try and sell it, or I should just do it as an ebook or something, or just release it as a paper. So that's the only thing, is deliberation on that. The jury's out which way I'm going to, you know, release it. But all the information on the ring cross and wheel cross tombstones, Chinon Tower, the carvings, Temple Ballantradock, the lost information, the pictures, everything is in that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I tell you what, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
I was very fortunate. It's impressive. It is impressive, Shawn. We need to talk about that again, and just get my foot in the door there on that one before the thousands of people that followed. Don't run off with anybody else on that one, Shawn, before we talk again.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Yeah, I definitely would be interested in hearing about that, because or reading it, because it sounds fascinating. And this is something that, like I said, that
it's amazing.
Yeah, it just seems like it would be. I mean, and I said this before, but the more I find out about the Knights Templar, and I'm just fascinated by them. And I have to throw this question out there real quick while it's on my mind is, you know, I mentioned this to some of my friends and colleagues that are away from Oak Island. They don't watch the show or anything like that. But I've mentioned, you know, things about the Knights Templar to them. And, you know, I've had a couple of them come back right away and say, oh, the Knights Templar, oh, yeah, those guys were heretics, and they got it, you know, the blah, blah, blah. They come up with all these things that they were arrested for that seems to prevail as the standard of what they were. I don't believe that. Give me your thoughts. I got three of you there that are researchers.
Well, that is about as insulting as one could get. Not to impugn your friends. There's a lot of malarkey out there, to put it politely. What they were accused of, there was an actual manual on how to persecute witches. And it was awfully, of course, this is also done under torture. So they took this manual and used it against Templars, and it all, baby eating, baby sacrificing, sodomy, every nasty thing you could possibly think of. And I will say this: the individuals that came up with this book on how to torture a confession of such nasty, low, base thought, you have to ask, who are these people that they would devise such horrible questions and use physical life changing injuries, to get confessions out of? One Templar that was tortured, they burned his feet, and as his bones were falling out of his feet, they put them in a bag and handed the bones out of his toes and his feet to him. So you've got to ask, who's asking the questions,
right?
Who's asking the questions? And out of all of these 35,000 different Christian points of view in the world that we have today, which one is right? And I will say something very controversial here. And I do not mean this in a modern context of religious controversy at all. This is historical. But Constantinople, now known as Istanbul, did not receive any military support from their Western Christian brethren, because the Western Christians at the time believed that their Eastern brothers were much more heretical than they were. So they allowed the back door of Europe, as it's called, the geographical back door of Europe, to be taken by the Muslim forces, the Navy. I'm going to get the date wrong, but what was it? Somewhere around 14 something or whatever. I'm not very good at remembering dates as a whole. So you've got two different views of Christianity in Europe. And because of that stubbornness, both thinking that the other is heretical, they lost Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. So, are we brothers or not? Forgive me for saying it that way, but that's what it comes down to. And that is why it is best to remember we're all human beings and to treat each other with respect. There were some very strange things that did come out of the tortures, such as the worshiping a head. But you got to look at it in the medieval context, when relic hunting, a place was not, a church or a commandery, wherever, was not sacred until it had the bones of a saint in it, preferably the bones of a saint that was very close to Jesus. So if the Templars were accused of worshiping a skull in their preceptories, it's not worship, it's veneration. That's different. Right. So they were using some very hypocritical language against the Templars. And today we don't venerate human body parts by and large. But during the Middle Ages, that was a much more in the forefront of people's thoughts, because if you led a holy life, if you became a saint, then your physicality is closer to God than the rest of the population base could ever be. So that's what I will say on that subject. So I hope that won't insult your friends, Jeff. But that's what after having been in this pool since the mid-90s, that's my take on it.
Jeff, I have something for you that you can write down. Sorry, Shawn.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
So write this down, Jeff. The Templars were absolved of their sins in
That's the one.
1308.
Yep.
What
and
year
it was
was it?
recorded 1308. 1308.
The Chinon parchment.
They were absolved 1 year after the accusations, and they were absolved at this castle called Chinon. It was the leaders of the Templar order, Jacques de Molay and all the guys under him, that confessed their sins. They met with several archbishops, I think 4 archbishops who were representatives of the Pope, and they admitted to doing some stuff, but not the scandalous accusations. And they expressed their regret. They asked for forgiveness, and the church forgave them. Wow. So in 1308, they received absolution, and it's recorded on the Chinon parchment. You can look it up in Wikipedia. You can even download the parchment and have it printed. I have it on my wall.
What's that called?
Dr. Barbara Frail brought that out in 2007. And the other thing that goes along with it, and forgive me for carrying on, I hope that wasn't a polemic, but that's my feeling on it. But and Alessandra, absolutely out of the ballpark, and very short too, which is exactly right. Oh gosh, I had a thought and it went somewhere.
Okay, well, while you're thinking about it, I'll finish about this.
No, it's gone. It went.
So
I apologize.
It's okay.
Apologize.
So this parchment, Jeff, you can download the image onto your cell phone.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
right.
I'm back. I'm back.
Just write 1308 on that image and show it to your friends at the pub and say, look, they were absolved in 1308. And there are even, I think, seals or stamps on parchment that show that it's official. The only thing is it was never published. So the general public didn't know about it. So it was drafted, it was stamped, but it was never made public because the Pope at the time was the puppet of King Philip IV. And this parchment, just like Gretchen said, sat in the secret Vatican archives until 21st century when Dr. Barbara Frail, as Gretchen mentioned, discovered it, and it had been like tagged wrong or miscategorized, and she unrolled it, looked at it, and that was it.
I just got Linda just did that. She just looked it up for me and she just texted it to me.
Excellent.
So thank you, Linda.
Excellent.
I appreciate that.
So keep that on your phone, Jeff.
That's the short answer. That's the short answer. Go with what Alessandra said, but it does all go back to, as she said, to King Philip of France. He wanted their money. He wanted to be the Grand Master. And once he installed Pope Clement, and moved the Vatican to Avignon, forgive my French lack of, he became the de facto Pope overnight. So if you want to point fingers, just point it at Philip le Bel, and you've got it. And within a year of executing Jacques de Molay, he was dead, and so was Pope Clement. And someone set the church on fire where Pope Clement was laying in state. They set the church on fire. So
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm definitely going to be using that because I never believed that it was true. And I stood for the Templars all through this whole thing, and I said it has to be something that they made up so they could bring them down, and they used it as a way to bring them down.
And hence the reason to covertly establish bases in North America. Exactly the reason. You're not going to be persecuted there.
Right.
So you make allies with North American indigenous people, which they did. You develop bases, you create the Nolan Cross, and you push further inland through the Hudson Valley, which leads to the Newport Tower. But you also push north in the St. Lawrence River Valley along the Great Lakes to Wisconsin. So.
All right, we're going to get there in just a second. One other thing before I had this mentioned from, did you have something you wanted to say, Alessandra? Sorry.
I want to ask Shawn about the Westford Knights, but that can wait.
Okay, all right. We'll get to that in just a second. I wanted to get back to Michael's question, and it had to do with the Portuguese. I'll bring it up here so you can see it. He says, what are your thoughts on the theory that the Templars through the Portuguese Empire tried to expand the order in Brazil as they are claimed to have found tunnels carved by the Templars. Do you have any thoughts on this? I know this has come up recently.
It's Dr. Kathleen Ball's research,
yes.
Right? She's a university professor, and she found this cave in Brazil in Alto Paraíso. It's actually, I think, a complex of 3 caves. And it looks like a cave, but it's actually an entrance to what seems to be a gold mine. And above the entrance of the cave is a very nice cross pate and some graffiti inside the cave. But she has to go back. I think she's going within a month to study the cave further. And I know she wants to look at the other 2 caves as well.
Exciting. That's exciting. Shawn, you probably have a greater insight on that than I do.
Yeah. Do you know anything about that, Shawn?
Well, only I've been in touch with Kathleen Ball. It's absolutely fascinating stuff, but I think that's going to be some solid evidence there. But when you look into the Templars in the North America and down into South America, it's obvious that in one form they were there probably after the dissolution in the form of flying the skull and crossbones as this other order, a naval power. We know that they made an alliance with the Knights of St. John, who lasted out in the Mediterranean right up to the time of Napoleon. The Hospitallers were formidable troops and quite often overshadowed by the Templars, but they were the equal in battle of the Templars in many ways. But you can imagine those 2 orders teaming up. Quite often they fought side by side as defenders of the faith. So you can imagine the Hospitaller and their naval power in the Mediterranean somehow combining with the Templars and for having a covert navy, so to speak, that actually fought their persecutors in other forms. It's all this stuff is now, is coming up through the sand to some extent to make something real. And Kathleen's discovery in Brazil, it's absolutely fascinating. And when you get into it and you find in village communities and small schools what they're actually discovering that's not making the mainstream, that's where we need to be. These I call it oblique lateral. It's areas that the mainstream isn't looking for, and all this information's kind of coming together to give us a better picture of this covert order of Templars, with their connections to the Hospitallers. I mean, all incredible stuff. And South America it's fabulous territory. I believe the Templars were great geophysical explorers. I believe they charted, biblical information. They were all over the world, and they were all over the world because people before them, the Phoenicians, different other cultures, were also over the world. The Templars made it a plan to be involved with native peoples, almost as a second nature. And I call the oppressors of the Templars the Babylonians, because there seems to be 2 energies of force on the planet that's still almost in existence today. And it seems there was an impasse between the Templars back then and the powers that be. I think the Templars were actually trying to set up, there's a lot of evidence to suggest, through, re-establish the lineage of King David as an earthly power, not just one that they revered from the Middle East. I think it was all singing and dancing plan for a new plan for the planet. And that sounds outlandish, but it may have been suppressed. I don't know. But there's plenty of evidence in that direction.
I will say that is one of the issues that the Templars did get into trouble with. xenophobia was huge at the time. You know, you did not speak to anybody that was outside your religion, outside of your physical DNA culture. And as Bernard de Clairvaux was a scholar and a seeker of wisdom, uh, so the Templars did become too, and I'm not saying that all of them were scholars and literate. No, that they were true fighting men, and not all of them were men of letters. They weren't, but the minds behind the Templars, the diplomats in the Middle East, in Israel, they were talking to Judaic scholars. And in Islam, the tradition of scholarship is high. Both the three Abrahamic religions have intense, incredible scholarship. So they weren't shooting the messenger, if I may be so blunt. And that is one of the huge issues in when they were brought down in 1307, that they were in too much contact with other cultures in order to learn. And they did bring a great deal into Europe, you know, the architecture, their capacity for stained glass windows, geometry for building, both, and astronomy, alchemy, which is a Middle Eastern word for chemistry, and other astrological practices. So you know, if you wanted to unseat the Templars, accusing them of learning too much and being too smart, and going against the power base of a greedy French king, certainly that's one of the reasons why they were brought down, because they were trying to learn how the world worked in practice, because it meant your life. If you were on the wild oceans, you can't call AAA, you can't call
Right.
the AA to come and rescue you. You had to do it.
Yep.
So, you know, they weren't fools. They wanted to make sure they were going to get from A to Z. And that's being at the at sword point, you know, living your life at the end of the spear, as it were, the practicalities of life. So I hope that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. So let's take this. We're at about an hour and a half now, and you guys know that I like to try to keep this to 2 hours because it's hard for everybody to sit for that long. But I tell you, this has been fascinating. I knew it would be. I really did. I was so looking forward to this. Let's take this and say, okay, 1307. All this came down on the Templars. And as Shawn talked about just a moment or just a little bit ago, he talked about them leaving and heading for Scotland, I guess. So let's start to work this towards the North America. So in when all this took place and everything came down and they had to leave, there was some ships standing by, I guess, because you know that they would know about this. I mean, there's going to be talk about this coming, I think. And they would have some time to prepare, I would think. It's not like
They had about a month. They had
right.
about a month. And there may have been preparation prior to that, because the King of France was they were watching his behavior. These, you know, the Templars weren't stupid. They were at the head of a, you know, they were next to the French crown, so not too dissimilar to being next to any government, high government, involved. And of course, they could be considered the SAS of their day, and also accomplished spies. They were code masters, but they had about a month to prepare. The 18 ships at La Rochelle, which is a great deal distance away from the Paris temple in France, there was no way anybody from Paris was going to make it down the coast that night. But regardless of that, the 18 ships were gone. And I believe that that was only a small section. The testimony of the Templars under trial, that is the only snippet we have of information at that time as to their possession of ships. It's my thought they had more than just that. Shawn brought up a battle at Malta prior that the Hospitallers were involved in, and they repelled a navy successfully. But during that battle in Malta, what was left of Templar records at Malta burned. A lot of archives burned, and we don't have the written records any longer. But I'm convinced that there were more than just 18 ships at La Rochelle. There had to have been. It would be foolish for there not to have been. But long story short, some of those ships went to Scotland from other ports, and some of them would have gone to North America. But the weird thing here, just to make matters muddy, is that one of the longest standing political alliances in the world is that of England and Portugal. One of their princesses, going back centuries, actually married into the crown of Portugal, and her son was Henry the Navigator. And that alliance is still going. So Henry the Navigator pushed Portuguese, and of course, it is a Templar country. Bernard de Clairvaux's nephew was the first king of Portugal. So it all gets very, convoluted. But so we're talking about English Templars, Scottish Templars, Portuguese Templars. It's not as clear cut and dried as just Scotland.
Right.
That's almost a myth. So I'm quite grateful to Carl and Hamilton for driving that home in their series Lost Templar Relics, that Portugal is huge. And Freddie Silva, Kathleen Ball's colleague in her efforts. And I admire Shawn for going to South America and seeking out the Templars there too. So it's a huge, global scenario. But yes, forgive me, I do talk a lot. But yes, the Templars did leave from multiple ports.
Right.
Some of them went to Scotland, some of them went to Spain, some of them went to Portugal. By land, they went to Switzerland, and some of them went to North America.
Yep. And it wouldn't make sense if they all went to one place. And if they had this vast treasure, and it might be obviously some treasure because they were the first bankers, and they were very wealthy, but also the relics, the artifacts that they had, the religious artifacts. Are you going to take them all and put them all in one place? Probably not. You're going to break them up.
Exactly. And Jeff, Zena Halpern brought up a great point. And just due north of Oak Island is Gold River. I mean, so it's an uncontested. There is no competition there, other than befriending indigenous peoples and becoming allies with them, which I believe they did do. So there was fur to be had, lumber, gold, precious metals, without the interference of other European religions and powers. So that in itself is the treasure of Oak Island, the resources and richness of the land. And I think it's just wild that Shawn's early, contacts with the native peoples of the Great Lakes partly inspired him as a sculptor. It's wild. Here we are, full circle. Wayne and I have been embedded with this potential Templar castle, dare I say it, in Wisconsin, and he reaches out to Shawn, and Shawn's been there. He's worked on ships, as a modern day Templar, dare I say it. It's in his blood. It's everything's kind of come full circle. The synchronicities are wild. They're just
he
wild.
does have some royalty there. I think Shawn does.
Oh, absolutely.
Shawn is Templar himself, aren't you, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm involved in the order in Scotland, and It's mainly a research organization, but it did, you know, we've got preceptories in Italy and Romania. And, you know, one of our investigations was based in Romania, and we found a similar genre of tombstones there to the ones in the UK. Slightly different, well, more sacred geometric type designs on the tombstones. And Italy, for instance, was absolutely, there was huge amounts of Templars over there in different, you know, connected to the whole international Templar movement as well. So I'm involved with those, and at Noss Head, when we were having our grand meetings, which was very, very theatrical. You know, you would have maybe as many as 40 knights and ladies, you know, processing around the headlands, all dressed in Templar cloaks, and we'd have a lovely sort of Templar service, and you know, then we'd all go back for kind of a big meal together in the Noss Head library. It was like something out of a movie, you know. It was just incredible, and we did our investigations.
And Shawn, you're in the middle of the movie. You're in the middle of the
yes,
movie.
You are.
Yeah. It does seem to be going that way in actual fact, and you know, I think what we need now. Maybe I'm digressing a little here, but is that connectivity to indigenous peoples of the planet, the people of the planet. We need to be, you know, reforging those alliances and doing the best for the earth in that respect. And I think that the Templars tried as much as they could back then, and there's no smoke without fire. We've you know, it's in native culture in America, the breath of the Templars, the connection, the symbolism, it's all there, and even actually in the language. And many universities in the US, well, not many, but a few have done studies on native language structures and the input of medieval Latin / English words in them. It's anomalous, but you know, we need to trace back to these days so we can go forward in many ways.
Yeah, and the flag of the Mi'kmaq people is incredible. It's the crescent moon, the star, the white field, the red cross. It's such an amazing flag, and of course there are legends of Glooskap, and in the same way that we are indigenous to Europe, you know, they are indigenous to those lands that our European ancestors visited and befriended, and I think those early contacts were much more positive than later contacts obviously were. Mm-hmm. And the culture there is so rich, you know, we have much to learn from them and from each other. But I'm grateful that I find Wayne Murphy very intriguing. If I were to think of another man as a modern day Templar, it would be Wayne Murphy. He's half Irish and half Mohican, and a retired law enforcement officer. What I would like to know, of course, there's no way to know right now, but I keep asking him about this, teasing him about this. What if one of his Irish ancestors had been a Templar? And the Mohicans at the time would have been in the Hudson River Valley area. So it's potential that those that eventually developed the Newport Tower, if you think of it as being Templar or Cistercian, which I do think it is, would have met Templars. the Mohicans would have met Templars there, but then go north to the St. Lawrence River Valley, and you've got his Irish background being married into the Mohican tribe there. So anyway, because they were forcibly moved in 1836, which was terribly sad. They had their own Trail of Tears, forced marched to the current location, and the native population that was there that's at the time welcomed them with open arms. And so for Wayne, I think there could be this really interesting circle of not only his ancient Mohican roots, but also, wouldn't that be fun to find out if he had a Templar knight in that background? I'm convinced there is. So,
and speaking of Wayne, he's calling in right now.
Oh,
so we have him on the
splendid.
phone here. Let's see if I can answer this thing. Wayne, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, let me turn it down just a little bit. That was a bit loud. Sorry, everybody. Blew your ears out. So yeah, we were getting ready to start pulling this around to what's happening in Wisconsin, and I know that Alessandra and I have talked about this, and we've talked about looking out the St. Lawrence Seaway and some different points. So we can get to that another time. But we've talked about the cities there. But we have some very interesting stuff happening with these two folks, Shawn Williamson and Gretchen Cornwall, and who's on the phone, Wayne Murphy. Wayne, thank you for calling in.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
And
well, how are you?
Hi.
Team Templar, amazing.
Yep, absolutely. So tell us a little bit what's happening with Team Templar right now. What's going on in Wisconsin?
Oh man, we've been really busy doing a lot of research and everything. I have, and exploring a lot of different avenues. And Jeff, I want to congratulate your show on the members that has picked up. Just amazing.
Oh, I'm telling you,
it's really great.
It's been crazy.
And you're a great co-host there. And can anyone listening imagine why I have Gretchen and Shawn on Team Templar? Just
no brainer to me. You got the best of the
dream team, you know.
Absolutely.
And just recently, we're going to be adding an archaeologist.
Oh, nice.
His name is Dan Welch. He holds a BA in religion from Gettysburg College in Maine, in archaeology from Boston University, and MBA from Bentley University. He has worked with various geophysical methods for the last 25 years and had the opportunity to conduct surveys on all 7 continents.
Wow.
His archaeological research focuses on the development of stratified societies in the pre-contact Caribbean and Gulf Coast Mexico. He has participated in archaeological fieldwork throughout North America and in Eurasia, and he's going to be joining us hopefully when we get going.
That's fantastic.
And he'll be working under the direction of Shawn Williamson.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, you do have the best team going right here. I'm telling you what, you have really assembled a great good quality people to help you with this. And I'm so intrigued by what's happening in there. Now, I'm one of the people who believe that the Knights Templar did make it over here. Some of them did come to North America and make their way into the interior as well as down the coast, as Shawn, we talked about with Shawn, and all down into South America. But now you're finding evidence that, or have found some evidence that, they did make it into as far as Wisconsin. And I think you've assembled a fantastic team here. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening, in the future here? I know we've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I didn't know what all you're allowed to talk about.
Well, I think some people may be amazed at this, and some people may not. It was unfortunately with a lot of prayer, and I don't say unfortunately in the wrong way, that I pulled Team Templar back. We're sitting on one of the world's biggest discoveries. Mm-hmm. And I pulled Team Templar back. I had numerous phone calls with Shawn and Gretchen, and we discussed this at great length. And Gretchen has went to great detail to write a unbelievable treatment. And
for TV proposal, for those who don't know what that means.
For us to continue forward. And Monday, we're going to be reaching out to Dominic and addressing a few of the concerns that we had, and sending this new treatment. And we have a writer researcher. We have a stonemason writer researcher. Now we have an archaeologist. And also we have the ability now to look at the paranormal side. I always thought of this as a diamond with many facets, and like building a house. I was always missing that paranormal side of it, and magnetic readings and things like that. And for the last month and a half, I've had access to a special sensor that I've been placing in and around the tomb over prior to the solstice and during the solstice to collect information. And I have another series of the sensor is working right now, so I'm going to give it a few more days to cook, and then I'll go out and pull the data, and hopefully it'll reveal some more mysteries.
Wow, that's fascinating. I tell you what, and we are really looking forward to that. And I know that you've kind of teamed up a little bit or had some help with our friends over at the Lost Relics of the Knights Templar, Carl and Hamilton. Fantastic. And I know Shawn played a big part of this as well, because he was actually overdoing some work with them in the UK, looking at those slabs. He mentioned that earlier. And you know, I think he was able to bring up the fact with them that you guys were talking about what's going on in Wisconsin, and they were very intrigued by this. So and again, I don't know if I'm stepping into an area that I'm not supposed to be talking about, but that has helped this collaboration, I think, as well, hasn't it?
Nothing's off the table.
Carl and Hamilton, great guys, and we're really appreciative of all their support and their help and their advice. It's like a never-ending well, and we're so glad. But like I said, Friday we had to pull back, and I've been in contact with Dominic, and we're going to be addressing some concerns, and we'll be providing some new documents. And I think that with the status of this team, sitting on possibly one of the most magnificent Templar finds west of the Great Lakes is unbelievable. And now we have this team available and ready to go at a moment's notice.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm really interested by the fact also that, you know, and the viewers of our group and those who watch the my show here know that I talk quite a bit about paranormal. I do like I've done many investigations myself, but it's interesting that you've taken that side to it as well. I mean, you know, when you talk about science in something and you want to look at every possible avenue that would bring you more data and get you more facts and proof of this, you know, paranormal, a lot of people are going to throw that out and just go, well, you know, paranormal, what does that have to do with anything? There's no such thing as ghosts anyway. But I'm glad that you're reaching out in all these different areas as well.
Well, I've been really blessed to have access to some really smart people, and I've surrounded myself with just the best team that there is, and lucky to get one of these sensors, and maybe hopefully in the future some additional equipment, and we'll see that where it goes. But I wanted this aspect to come forward in the Wisconsin project, because there's obviously things that I don't know, and there's great mysticism behind the Templars. Why wouldn't, if as an investigator, I look at all theories. I dismiss nothing until I can prove that it's nothing.
Right.
And so I like to look down many roads. I like to open all the doors and check under the bed and see what's hiding underneath there. And man, I just got some of the best people in the world to work with.
Yep, you sure do. I know I was just showing a picture there just a moment ago, and I'll bring it back up real quick. And this is just a picture. It's a picture of, I know you can't see it. Well, maybe you can if you're watching on the, I know you're having some internet issues there, Wayne, but it's a picture of Shawn Williamson, and he is out with, he's looking at those tombstone the stone lids there. And you can see the Hamilton's fedora hat over here on the one side, and he's on camera. And then of course Carl is on the left side, and they're actually working together over there. And that was so neat to be able to bring that to the forefront, because now with their interest in all of this, it has opened so many doors for you. And I tell you, we are all looking so forward to this coming to the forefront, and this your discoveries that you have out there being known to the world. Because again, we've talked about this as far as Oak Island many times. Everybody would love to see them pull all this treasure up out of the ground, but it's the history that is very likely changing what we've known about North America, what we've been taught over all these years. Now we're pulling up evidence that is very likely going to change many of the things we've been taught. And some people are resistant to that. And some people are very, even if there's some scholars out there or academics out there that are looking at it going, in the mind, they're thinking, yeah, that's a possibility, but man, do I have what it takes to step out and bring this out in the public? And most of them are going, I'm not going there. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to be the one to stretch my neck out and get in trouble for, and get looked at and laughed at. But you and your team are willing to take this to the next level. And I applaud you for that, because I think you found something that's very significant, and you've got a great team of people that's going to help you bring this out, and are not afraid of putting their neck out and saying, this is what we found. Let's throw it out there and see what everybody thinks about it. And I applaud you for that. I really do. I know, Gretchen, you look like you wanted to say something there about that as well. I don't know.
Just briefly.
Ahead,
And this is in regards to Oak Island itself, as far as treasure being there. What I thought was just fantastic, and really quickly, I can't remember which well they dealt with, but Dr. Ian Spooner, who's just incredible, discovered that there was a high concentration of dissolved silver below ground in the one well, and I'm not good at remembering which well or
C1.
which.
Actually, there was 3 of them. C1 was one of them. Yep.
Okay, but as it was described after the analysis, that there was not just a little glass vial, but a dump load truck of dissolved silver, which means that there could, because silver dissolves, which I didn't know, but gold does not.
Correct.
So if there is an unearthly amount of silver in that water, then there should be gold down that well as well. So I am hoping, with everyone else, that they do find significant objects this coming season. That would be spectacular. I've always thought Oak Island, just briefly, as a repository over the centuries. Vikings, definitely Templar, and I'm of a mind the Templars did not develop the money pit. I used to think they did, although it's potentially going forward, the dendrochronology, the wood coming out of the ground, speaks of repair work. So, but there was dissolved silver in that water of a substantial quantity. So, but I do the Vikings were there, and their descendants, the Templars, were on Oak Island, who I believe created Nolan's Cross and repeated visits, etc., which culminated in the exploration party that pushed westward along the Great Lakes. So, yeah.
And that's something that Alessandra and I were talking about, and she brought up that point about, and we look at what would be the most likely route if they did come over, and we think they came over and they landed in Nova Scotia. And what would be the most likely route that they would take to get into the interior of North America? And it would be down the St. Lawrence Seaway and come down there. And Alessandra pointed out this one day that we had her on, as she was talking about these cities of what is it, Montreal and Detroit.
Toronto and Detroit. Yeah.
And how they relate.
Montreal,
the names are very similar to what's over in the Middle East.
Brilliant, Alessandra, just brilliant.
Well, they resemble the names of Templar castles in Middle East. So there was a castle Montreal, Castle Toron, and Castle Destroyed in the Holy Land.
I thought that was brilliant of you to have come up with that. You shared that diagram with me, and yes, that's impressive insight. Absolutely.
Well, and I found out since then that castle, or it's actually fortress. Fortress Destroyed. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it in French, but one of the builders of this fortress in the Holy Land was Hugh de Payens, the founder and the first Grand Master of the Knights Templar.
Wow. See, I'm telling you, there's too many coincidences that tie all this together. I mean, there's so many people that want to just throw out, oh, the Templars, they were never in North America. Come on, you guys are idiots to think that. There's too much evidence to say that is poppycock, that it is true, that they have been here. I mean, there's just it just keeps coming.
And we really believe with Gretchen and Shawn's help, Gretchen first coming and verifying a lot of things, we do believe that the Templars were here in Wisconsin. And I can't speak on their, at their level of that knowledge. I do a lot of research in other areas, and we're a well-rounded team. Mm-hmm. But I do trust their opinion in this matter, and they're also staking their reputations on it. Mm-hmm. They've seen a lot of pictures. Gretchen's been there personally. She's touched things. She's known things, and when I say that Team Templar has pulled back, think of it that we're just reorganizing a little bit, mm-hmm. and just moving some parts around. We're very interested in working with Carl in Hamilton, and there's nothing out the window. It's just that for professional reasons, I took this approach. It's my responsibility, and this falls upon me. So we'll be in touch with the powers that be on Monday, and there's going to be a fabulous document coming that Gretchen has prepared, and it's just amazing.
I tell you what, we cannot wait to find out what's happening over there. I know it's now that we've intrigued everybody's interest, and of course mine. I know that the viewers that are watching today and that will watch us later on are just going to be on pins and needles to find out what's going on over there, because it's just fascinating work, and I applaud you all for being part of it. And again, like I said earlier, Wayne, that you have put together a fantastic team. And if you have any spots open, just saying that I'm not that far away. No,
Jeff, you're absolutely invited, and I will make this a public statement. This is all brought together by the grace of God.
Yeah, it truly is. It is, and I just I really look forward to the fact that you guys are working on this, and I hope that it comes to fruition very soon, because we all want to know. We all want to know what's going on over there.
And I also want to compliment Gretchen on earning her Templar wings in the service to her mother.
Oh wow!
Oh. Thank you. I appreciate that, and I could not walk away from the situation. Mm-hmm. So, and it's been a difficult year plus for millions of people around the world, and my family felt it, and I'm grateful that we are all safe and well. Some aren't. A few bruises, a few issues, but I'm grateful that my family is safe. I hope yours are. Economically, it's been really tough, and I'm grateful to be back in England. And Mom is being looked after by my siblings, 3 sisters and a brother. And she herself is doing a bit better. Her health is improving, for which I'm very grateful for. And there were times prayers were needed, and grateful to receive those. And I'm just thrilled to be back in England, and commencing with my work, which is my life's work and passion. And certainly the Trail of the Templars helps me explain my life. And I think that there are many people out there who feel the same way. It wasn't until I came across them as a subject where all of a sudden things for me as a human being fell into place.
Right.
And I'm grateful to be here, that Wayne reached out to me with an original photo of what I identified as a cross pate, which is a very specific European Templar symbol, right where it shouldn't have been. So
right.
I can't wait to continue looking for further carvings. So
Right.
I don't have a copy on me, but Jeff has been kind enough to show the Templar Quest to North America, a photojournal. Many of the carvings that I encountered on that first trip there are in the book, including a kite shield, European heraldry symbol called the annulet, which is a family symbol, heraldry symbol, that I want to look into. I believe I might be able to identify, at least I'm hoping to, Templar families that bore that symbol, which is basically a punched coin. Xena identified those as pellets or dots. They're actually coins. And an annulet is a punched coin. In other words, the center has been removed, and indicates a younger son that has gone into the service of the church.
Wow.
And in this case, the service of the Templars. So there's much to discover there yet. And one way or another, I don't know how yet, but I will be there in September because there are more carvings to identify. So I look forward to doing that.
Oh, that's great. Well, folks, there I put up this picture for you. This is one of her many books that she has, that Gretchen has, the Templar Quest to North America, a photo journal. And there, it's available on Amazon, just about anywhere you can buy books.
Amazon, I do have a few signed copies.
Oh, okay.
That I send gift wrapped and personalized, that are on my website, GretchenCornwall.com. So that particular book is on back order with my partner publisher at the moment, but it shouldn't be too much longer before I have that. My first book, that one, I do have in stock for the USA and also the UK. I haven't put it up for Canada because of the exchange rate makes it prohibitive to post as well as to purchase, which is a bit sad. But that's economics for you, isn't it? But anyway.
Well, that one's definitely a good one too. And this one I haven't. I still have to order this one. I do have the other book, and I've gone through it. It is fantastic. And folks, here's another one that you should really check out if you're interested in the Knights Templar and getting some really good information about that. You really should check out this book here. And also, and I'll bring this back up real quick. And I think Shawn, you were talking about this. The one of yours that's when is this one coming out? It's Questus. Is that the?
Yeah,
is that
it will be ready in autumn, and okay. Questus, yeah, and this is about many of the things that we've discussed, but compacted into a novel, really.
Right.
And you know, it's just been lockdown therapy, shall we say? So
yeah,
so,
for sure.
so that's it. So that's it, really. And you know, but more than anything else, you know, I hope the book will convey the sense of the touch of stone, and what that can convey to people in so many different ways. Because, you know, for me, the evidence has always been in stone, and you know, by knowing stone and knowing the heritage of the people that have carved and worked it, then we will get a bit closer to our final goal of you know, finding out some of these truths to some extent, and and maybe along the way, inventing kind of a new approach to research and archaeology and so forth. Yeah.
I have a question for Shawn.
Please.
Shawn, in the United States, on the East Coast, in the state of Massachusetts, there is an effigy which is called the Westford Knight.
Ah, yes.
It's an image of a medieval knight carved into stone, and it is believed that it's the likeness of Sir James Gunn. So that would have been one of your ancestors?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where I came in onto the scene. Originally, I was part of the clan Gunn, and the Sinclairs asked me to join them as sculptor, because of some of the knowledge I had of, stonework, castle restoration, that type of stuff, building techniques, but also my, ability to sculpt and work stone. But Sir James Gunn, the Gunns were, of course, allies to the Sinclairs through history. But at that particular point in time, 1398, we think, when Prince Henry Sinclair came over to, and of course I did the Prince Henry Sinclair statue at Noss Head, which is 8.5 feet high. But when they came over to Scotland, they brought Sir James Gunn was with them as the, main operator or ally of the Sinclairs. He was like a lieutenant, if you will, of having probably Gunn clan knights as well that worked with an alliance with the Sinclairs. And Sir James Gunn, for some reason, perished over there, and in the place that you've stated, and they made this what they call a punch hole effigy, which is a very basic form of carving work, but done with what they call a point or a punch, which is a rudimentary carving tool. And people have done rubbings of it. I think Andrew Sinclair had somebody that did fabulous rubbing that brought this effigy to life of Sir James Gunn, and the motif is clan Gunn motif on the shield. So again, my family originally were Williamson is the sept name of Gunn, one of the sons of the main progenitor of the clan originally, and they had an alliance, held an alliance with the Sinclairs. Although I have to say, from time to time, they did fight. All the northern clans in Scotland, the Keiths, the Sutherlands, the Mackays, the Gunns, the Sinclairs on the main were from Viking origin, whereas those on the Western Isles were quite often had a different cultural background. And that's the history of, in the annals and history of Scotland.
Thank you.
Williamson, son of William. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alessandra, you were just saying that William is a very popular name amongst the Sinclair family. So
Yes.
I guess that all kind of ties together. Yeah.
There's lots of Williams and Henrys in the Sinclair clan.
Yep. Wow. Well, thank you for that. I tell you what, we have now surpassed the 2-hour mark. So, and I tell you what, honestly, folks, we could go on. This subject, these subjects, I should say, are just fascinating, and it could carry on and on and on for a long time. But we do try to limit this to 2 hours, even though we have gone past a little bit. But again, so much fascinating information, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on today. We are going to have you back once again. And I know, Wayne, are you still on the phone with us?
Yes, sir. And I would like to thank you personally, Jeff, for allowing me to call in.
Oh,
and you have so many new fans, and I really wanted the chance to showcase the depth of Team Templar through Gretchen and Shawn.
Yep. Yeah, and that's exactly one of the reasons that we had this today. And I call them an interview. They're not really an interview. It is kind of, but I mean, it's more of just a time for us to get on to talk and discuss these things that we find so passionate to us. And then let people sit and listen to it and join in. We had some great questions. I know we had a couple of really good questions that I actually never got to that were asked. I know Bill Kelly asked one of the questions. He said, what evidence was there of the Knights Templar have ever been on Oak Island? And we could go on for another quite a while about that. There's quite a bit.
Next time.
I could certainly help with that. But next time,
Next
absolutely,
time.
they were there. They were there.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you too. And then also Teresa Pendleton asked a question of what other orders could account for possible clues left behind. Yeah. And then Jennifer Brandt also asked a question about, I think we actually answered this one. She asked, does the Lost Relics team have plans to come and take a look at the Wisconsin site? And if so,
I hope so.
In regards to Lost Relics, like I said, we want to work with them very much.
Mm-hmm.
We just had a slight technical problem there, and we'll be addressing that Monday.
Right.
And hopefully that this all can be worked out to a mutual agreement, and we can all move forward.
That's fantastic.
And then we can all wonder why in 1425 is there a painting in the Pope's old apartment of Native Americans and horses.
Oh yeah, I know. We never even got to that. I was so.
That's okay. That's a tidbit for next time.
Oh yeah.
Well, Wayne is so humble. Wayne is so humble. He has done a remarkable amount of research around in Native Americans because he is a tribal elder.
Right.
He has the capacity to speak and ask questions of his counterparts in other tribes that where someone like myself would not be able to necessarily be welcomed, whereas he is because of who he is. So he is certainly worth having on just by himself, Jeff, and he has done an incredible amount of work on that front.
Yeah, I was looking for that picture. I had it, and I all of a sudden I'm not sure exactly where it's at, but we'll have to link that for everybody in the on the show link here so that you can see that picture. But yes, as Wayne was saying, what was the date on that again? When that
14. Oh my God, I was thinking of Verzano in 1425, but it was 1493.
Okay. Yeah, 1493.
Ridiculously early.
Yeah, and this thing is fascinating. When Wayne shared this picture, I'm still trying to find it right now. I'm still looking around. When Wayne shared this picture,
it was a fresco painted in the private apartments of the Borgia Pope, one of the Borgia popes. So it was not meant for public viewing. It was just for the Pope's eyes. Yeah.
Didn't they lock up that his apartment for?
I think it got painted over.
Years it was hidden away. Yeah. And if memory serves me right, I don't want to say the person's name because if I say it and get it wrong, then I don't want to have hard feelings. But they brought this to my attention, and then I did some more work on it and highlighting it, and that's what I sent to you.
Okay. I'm going to have to put this up, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. No, go right ahead. It ties in with the Templars in North America. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have pictures of horses and Native Americans in a picture from 1425.
Right.
It took too long to commission the painting to do that.
Right. And you can see clearly that one of the Native Americans depicted in the picture has a mohawk.
Isn't that something?
It is very something. And it's fascinating. Folks, I'll put it up in the group chat or in our group Facebook page so that you guys can see it. But really it is very interesting picture. Fresco, I guess, would be the better word to use for that. And we're going to have to talk about that at length. That maybe Wayne and our guests here today can chime in.
You
on
have
that
to invite Wayne again
yeah,
in person. Yeah.
You can see I've been busy on a little bit of research.
Yes, and thank you for that. We appreciate that very much.
And thank you for letting me call in. Everyone, you have a great day. Bless you all.
All right. Bye-bye now, Wayne.
Wayne.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and
Thank you,
wrap things
Jeff.
up. And again, folks, thank you so much for being here with us today. Gretchen, Shawn, and Alessandra, thank you again for helping and co-hosting with me. I knew that this would be one of those times where we just get to learn so very much about the Knights Templar and their coming over to North America. And I knew that this would be great. And again, I could just go on forever on this, but again, let's wrap this up. So thank you very much. If you have anything parting you'd like to say before we go, anybody?
I just want to express my gratitude that you invited me, Jeff, to be your co-host, and it was very lovely to see Gretchen and Shawn as well.
Yep.
I want to talk to you guys for hours, but I
know we need to all get together for like a week and just talk. But I do want to say thank you as well, and to everybody, you know, tuning in or watching afterwards. Thank you for your time, and we're looking forward to continue to learn. And I always learn when you know, in just having a chance to speak about this. And Shawn, it was just fantastic to connect with you and understand more of your knowledge base and background as well. So yeah, just thank you, everybody. So
yeah, thanks very much, Jeff, Gretchen, Alessandra, fabulous, Wayne as well, Carl and Hamilton, everybody that's involved, and you know, all the listeners and watchers. God bless everyone.
Bless you all.
And I look forward to meeting you all in person at some point.
It shall happen.
Hopefully in the near future. So, hey, thank you so much, folks, for being with us here today. We really do appreciate you coming by and spending part of your Saturday with us. And if you're out there on the YouTube side, if you don't mind, click on that subscribe button for us. It does help us out. And if you like our content, give us a thumbs up and let us know how we're doing in the comments, and we'll put those up as we go along there. So thank you very much for being here. Again, thanks for everybody, our guests coming on today. You guys have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.